Thank you very much, everybody, for the conference so far. Sorry about that extremely long break, but at least it means you're all now very comfortable and watered and ready for what I suspect is going to turn out to be the main event this afternoon. I'm delighted to welcome to their first Scottish appearance together, both candidates for the leadership. Doing nothing but reading in alphabetical order. I've got a brief introduction of both of them, and I've been completely even-handed. If their Wikipedia pages are wrong, it's not my fault. So, Ed Davey is our acting leader. He is 55 years old. He went to Nottingham High and Oxford, where he read PPE, and subsequently did an MSc in economics at Birkbeck. He claims as job history working in a pork pie factory, in Boots the Chemist, being a party researcher and being a business forecaster. He was elected to Parliament in 1997, sadly lost in 2015, regained his seat in 2017 and held it in 2019. Layla is a strikingly younger 38 brackets nearly. She was educated all over the world, in Brussels, in Jamaica, and latterly at Rodin School. She read physics at Imperial College and did a PGCE at Brunel University. For the Scots amongst you, PGCE is a postgraduate certificate in education, which you have to do if you're going to be a teacher, which she did. She did a master's in education at University College of London and worked as a teacher, as a tutor, and then a manager of other tutors. She won Oxford, West and Abingdon in 2017 and held it, I have to say, happily, comfortably in 2019. I'm going to get off your screen, hand you over to Katie Gordon, who is aided by John Ferry for this session.
Okay, thank you, Sheila. So welcome everyone to the Scottish Conference Lib Dem Leadership Hustings with a Difference. And thank you so much to Ed and to Layla for joining us today. So my name is Katie Gordon and I am chairing this session. And John Ferry, who you can see on screen at the moment, is the vice chair and will also be our timekeeper. So this is a different kind of leadership hustings. I hope you're all aware of that. There's been some challenges with the publicity, but basically it's going to be where I'm asking the questions and it's more like a job interview, okay? There will be a more traditional Scottish leadership hustings on the 26th of July when members will be able to ask questions. So how this process is going to work is I'm going to ask each question of both candidates in turn, and I will alternate who goes first each time. So each candidate will get a maximum of 4 minutes per answer. We did test this out and we thought that's probably plenty, but don't feel you have to take the whole 4 minutes, but you can if you like. Okay. But I will stop you if you go over 4 minutes, and John, as our timekeeper, will now demonstrate the sound that will mark the end of the 4 minutes.
You will hear that.
Which is very technical. It's a glass of
no expense spared.
Yeah.
We like to keep it down at a decent level with all this fancy technology that we're using. Keep us all down to earth.
Yeah. So I believe a coin has already been flipped before you joined us, and that Layla was to go first. So we're not having initial speeches because, as I said, it's a job interview. So basically, Layla will go first in answering the first question. All right. So any questions? That all clear? Magic. I hope this is going to be a fun session and we'll learn a lot about you. So, okay, I hope everybody will join the session, and we are going to aim to take as much of the hour as we had allocated as we can get away with. All right? So we'll start with the most obvious question first, and this starts with Layla and then I'll come to Ed. So Layla, what do you think are the most important qualities for a party leader, and why is that you?
Well, first of all, thank you so much, everyone, for being here. I'm really, really delighted to be part of your hop-in conference today. We had a few technical issues getting in, but it's wonderful that we're able to Zoom across the country in this way and speak to so many members. And I think actually I'll start there. For me, one of the best qualities of a great leader is the ability to bring out the best in others around them. And that's what I've done all of my life. It's what I did as a teacher in the children that I taught. My view and why I wanted to be a teacher at all was that every child should be able to thrive. And actually, sometimes that care and attention, that understanding what makes them tick, that bringing out the hidden talent that maybe they didn't know they had, that was the thing that was my bread and butter. It's why I was the youngest ever head of year in the school that I worked in. I started teaching actually very young. I was 21, having done my degree at Imperial College in physics. I went to Belgium. And that's where my parents were. My father was working for the European Commission at the time. We traveled the world, as Sheila suggested, but also places like Ethiopia, Jamaica, Jordan. My mum's Palestinian. And I taught in schools where we had a huge diversity of international students. And I absolutely loved it. And it was very much my first love in terms of a job. And then later on, I did teach in a social enterprise here in Oxford for 4 years, and it was a business, and I was part of the senior leadership team. And in all of those walks of life, what I always aim to do is to have a collaborative approach, to have an inclusive approach, one that really empowers others to do the best that they can do, whilst giving them a strong sense of my principles and my ethos, so that they feel that they've got a wide way in which they can maneuver whilst we're all pulling in the same direction. And that's what I want to bring to this party. But that's also, I would argue, what this party needs right now. I mean, we have seen from the general election review that the case for change is unequivocal. It says that, you know, for the last 10 years, we have slowly but surely been hollowed out in our ability to campaign in order to create that machine so that when good planning meets opportunity, electoral success happens. And what we need in a leader now is someone who really understands that and who has done that in practice. And if we were a business, it is, I think, horrific how little we invest in our grassroots. If we were a business who invested so little in their employees, no wonder we would be going down that path. So what I want to see is increased investment in our volunteers so that there's training, so that people feel really valued, so that that ecosystem of organizers that actually used to exist in the party can start to blossom again. And looking forwards, we can and must do better. We have to do better. This country deserves better. But it all starts by fixing our machine. I have the experience and I have the knowledge in navigating the changes that I have in my life to know that with me as leader, we can make the changes necessary.
Thank you, Layla. And Ed, the same question to you. What do you think are the most important qualities for party leaders, and why is that you?
Well, thank you, Katie. It's great to see everybody, although I can't quite see you. All I would say is please don't clap today. I don't want anyone to think we're practicing for Nicola's birthday. But seriously, the qualities in the leader, I mean, ultimately, it's, can you get the party winning? And to be able to do that, I think you've got to have great communication skills. You've got to connect and relate to people, and you've got to be a campaigning team leader. And I think I tick all those boxes. On communication, I think I've got a very clear vision. I want us to have a greener, fairer, more caring society. And I want us to repeat that message so it gets through to people, so people know what the Liberal Democrats stand for, why they vote Liberal Democrat. Because I think, as the general election review showed, we've not been good at that in recent years. So a clear vision, a greener, fairer, more caring society. And then someone who's cut through on the media. I've been working on the media for 20 plus years. I've done all the tough interviews from, you know, Andrew Neil to John Humphreys to Kathy Newman to Sophie Ridge. And I think I've given a really good account of myself and the party. So when we're grilled at the general election, you'll know you've got someone who can perform for our party and communicate at that crucial moment. You've got to connect. I think I relate to people quite well. People think I'm pretty accessible. And that's partly through the constituency work I've been doing for 20 years. It's also my background in my life, frankly. I lost my dad when I was 4, and then my mum became terminally ill when I was 12, and I nursed her for 3 years with my brother before she died. And losing both your parents when you're a young person, it sort of shapes your life a bit. And I was brought up by my nana, then I had to care for her when she was elderly, and Emily and my wife and I care for our 2 children, including my son John, who's got severe disabilities. He can't walk or talk. and with learning disabilities and needs 24/7 care. So caring is a great leveler. And I think I understand the 10 million carers in our country and what they go through. And I think that helps me connect and relate to people. And I think as a team leader, the party leader has to show that they've had that success. And in Kingston and Surbiton, I like to think people would say that I led from the front. I take all the delivery rounds that were the most awful, the rounds from hell, we call them up, difficult stairways and behind shops and so on. And I do that to show that if I would do it, everyone else would do it too. And when I was at the Cabinet Minister for Climate Change at UN climate talks, I'd take my team of civil servants and we'd get to know each other and we'd have fun. We'd go out for a drink. And, for me, a team leader has to be someone who is there with everybody else, particularly the Liberal Democrats. And I think that's how you inspire the team to go that extra mile. I remember when I was working with Paddy, he would send you a little handwritten note if he thought you'd done a good job, and it meant an awful lot. So if we're going to win, we need a leader who can communicate with a vision and great on TV. You've got to connect and relate to ordinary people. And you need someone who can lead a team and knows how to campaign and win. And I think having won 6 out of 7 elections, I've got a bit of a track record.
Okay, thank you, Ed. So we'll move on to the second question. And this is to Ed, first of all, to answer first. As a party, we often struggle for media airtime. How would you overcome this?
Well, first of all, you've got to make sure you're fast with your responses, as distinctive as possible, and you've got a great team supporting you. It's no secret that that's what you've got to do. It's tough for the party. It always has been. But just this week, I was on the Today programme, BBC News at 10, News at 6, Sky, Talk Radio, and the Guardian newspaper mentioned me in their editorial about the call that I've been leading in Parliament for an independent public inquiry into coronavirus. I also did a tweet which Nigel Farage didn't like, which I was quite pleased about. So you can cut through, but let's be frank with you. The key thing is not media for media's sake. It's how you use the media when you get on. And that's about message discipline. So you'll not be surprised to know when I get on, I'm going to talk about a greener, fairer, more caring society. And after about 5 years of my leadership, you're going to be fed up with hearing me saying that and my team saying that. And I'll want you to say that, because if we say it clearly, we will get through to people and people will know that we're what we stand for. I helped develop the policy of a penny on income tax for education with Paddy, where we're putting taxes up. People were really surprised to invest in our children and young people. Back in 1990, it was our most popular policy in 92, 97 and 2001, 3 elections. But by the time we repeated it for 3 decades, 50% of the population, 50%, knew it was our policy and liked it. You have to have that message discipline. And that's what I would bring, that experience of message discipline and finding those cut-through messages on core themes. Final thing is this. Actually, if you look back over our party's history, the really key thing is when you start winning elections. We've often been low in the opinion polls, particularly after a bad election like we've just suffered. And it takes time for people to sort of think we're relevant again. And that comes through winning at local elections, winning in the Scottish parliamentary elections, the Welsh parliamentary elections, the London elections, winning across the country at local government. When you do that, you become relevant and meaningful again, and people have to report you. And time after time, our media coverage has improved when we've won at local level by great campaigning. So I'm passionate about that. I want to make sure that we are, as Tim Farron said, we're picking a ward and winning it. And when we keep doing that, particularly in the areas that we can win in council level and at constituency level, we will turn that around. We'll get in the local media, the regional media, and yes, we'll be able to cut through the national media too. I relish the prospect of taking on those tough interviews. I've done it before, and I'd like to do it again as we go into the next election. Thank you.
Thank you, Ed. So Layla, over to you with the same question. As a party, we often struggle for media airtime. How would you overcome this?
Well, on this I would people to how much media cut through I already get. And that's from the position of a backbencher, not as deputy leader or acting leader, but what I've managed to achieve in the last 3 years. I've also done all of those shows, and it's important that you know that you do have a leader who in the critical moment does get that cut through, and you do that in a number of different ways, but one is by being distinctive and by carving out a different space in politics from Boris Johnson and Keir Starmer. And one of the reasons why I think it's so important that we get cut through is because we need to look at, you know, what people think of us. When they look at us right now, if they are looking at us, they don't necessarily trust us. And that was partly to do with coalition. And of course, in Scotland, that was the beginning of some very difficult times for the party, and arguably was the reason why the SNP took hold. But since then, also Revoke, where it felt that we weren't going along with the people's vote, where it felt that we had abandoned that cause. And we need to win people's trust back. And we do that by showing that we are relevant. And the reason why media cut through matters is because it can get things done for people. Right at the beginning of this crisis, I got cut through by coining the phrase Brexit before breathing, when I pointed out that the government wasn't being part of that EU procurement scheme to get ventilators. And that got cut through. And in fact, they then changed their minds, albeit they seem to have messed so much else up that it doesn't really matter. But the one thing that I'm really proud of is working across the media and across the House, in fact, to get stuff done for people. And I would point to the coronavirus compensation scheme that I've delivered. That was done, started a campaign in a very, very Lib Dem way. My constituent contacted me, NHS worker, scared for their life, asked, is there not an army-style compensation scheme that covers NHS workers? And there wasn't, not in the same way, not everybody. So I pulled together a coalition of MPs across the House, and you have to work across the House from the fourth place. We don't have the armory of government behind us. We have to deliver for people now. And then I got a phone call from the Daily Express newspaper. Now, guys, the only time that the Daily Express newspaper tends to have Lib Dems anywhere in it is to call us, you know, Ramonas and to make fun of us. But no, they called me up and said, we love this campaign. We're going to help you deliver it. And it was on the front pages, crediting the party, crediting me with leading it for 5 days running. One question they had at the number 10 briefing was on this matter. And in England, I can now say that those grieving families get £60,000. This is the kind of thing that we need to do with the media cut through that I will get. Because unless we can show people what's the point of voting Lib Dem, what are you going to do for us now, then they aren't going to come over to our cause. And in Scotland, we have to make sure that the messages that I am getting cut through on match those messages that you're putting forward in Scotland. And top of my list, my 3 pillars of my campaign are education, the environment, and the economy. And I know that in Scotland, education is one of the biggest issues in Scotland. We have to make sure that whatever I'm saying as leader in Westminster absolutely matches up with what Willie and everyone else is going to be saying in time for the Scottish elections next year.
Thank you, Layla. Okay, so next question, starting with you again. So Layla, as a party, our policies and achievements are often overlooked. And we could see that with Michael Gove claiming credit recently for something that was Liberal Democrat.
That's right, and I took him to task, yeah.
What do you consider our proudest achievement in the past 10 years and why?
Well, thank you. And actually, you've raised it. And it's the pupil premium, which, you know, is a long-standing policy of the party. In fact, I was talking to John Halson, one of my members, who was one of the people who put it first to conference. And the reason why we had done that was because it spoke to our values, the values of tackling inequality, of making sure that no matter your background, you can get on in life and thrive. And this is one of the reasons why education, I think, is an empty space in politics. There is a space for the party of education. And when we were that under Paddy Ashdown, that was one of the times when we got that real cut through. So I'm really proud of the pupil premium. And in fact, I was on the conference stage in 2012 talking about that exact thing, how it spoke to our values, how it spoke to what I was so proud of to be as a Lib Dem. And more recently, when Michael Gove decided to try and steal it, I took him to task in the papers for it. So we have to celebrate what we did in the past. But what we did in the past is not what's going to get people to vote for us in the future. And in the future, the question that people need to ask themselves is, which is the leader that's going to get us noticed by enough people for the issues that they really care about, so that they can see us as that credible force? And that's all coming back to trust and credibility. Trust, because we do need to move on. And whilst there were brilliant things that happened in coalition, there were things that really, really hurt the country and hurt us too. And you can't whitewash it. You can't pretend it didn't happen. But we can't just pretend the bad things didn't happen either. We now need to send a signal that we are a renewed party. More than 50% of our members are new since that time. And with me as leader, people will look at us again, realise that we have started afresh, and then listen to what we have to say that is a positive vision for Britain's future.
Thank you, Layla. And now, Ed, the same question to you. As a party, our policies and achievements are often overlooked. What do you consider to be our proudest achievement of the past 10 years, and why?
Well, I have a lot of sympathy with what Layla said on the pupil premium, not least because when I was education spokesman, I developed that with John Houston, and it became our policy, and we got it into government in the coalition. We achieved that by putting it into power, because you can't achieve things unless you go into power, and it can be tough. But by being in power, you can achieve things. And we did that with the pupil premium. We should have it in Scotland too. But I'm actually really proud of our green record, particularly our renewables. You know, and that started in Scotland with people like Nicol Stephen and Jim Wallace. When they were in coalition in Holyrood with the Labour Party, they did a fantastic job of laying the groundwork. And then we got into coalition, and it was really difficult fighting the Tories. Now, I'm an anti-conservative politician. It was very uncomfortable, but I fought them every day and every week. I fought George Osborne, I fought Eric Pickles. And as a result of that, the work that Chris Hume did, the work that I did, we nearly quadrupled renewables. We became a world leader in offshore wind. And Scotland's taken a huge advantage of that. And don't let the SNP say they know about renewables, because let's remember, energy generation is not devolved. And so it was Liberal Democrats who did that, not the Scottish nationalists. So we should be proud of Nicol and Jim, and proud of what we achieved on the green agenda. And Lena's right, when you go to the future, you need to be able to say that you're credible. And with me as leader, you be credible on renewables, because I've signed off more solar farm, wind farm, offshore and onshore for Britain than any other British politician. So I could say, look, we've got this green vision for a green economy, for green jobs, for green power across Scotland, across the whole of the UK, to bring those green jobs. And I haven't just got the vision. I'm not just talking about it. I've done it. I've delivered it in the teeth of opposition from the Tories. So, you know, I would want us to talk about the renewables as one of our great achievements. Although I do agree, pupil premium was a pretty good idea.
Okay, thank you, Ed. And now I'll ask the next question to you first. So, Ed, can you give me an example of when you've persuaded an audience to accept a policy or message that they were initially hostile to?
I remember fighting Brexiteers way back, and there was an audience of people. Some were never going to change their minds. Some were so ardently anti-Europe. Some were really pro-Europe. And there was, I don't know, about a dozen people in the audience who could be swayed. And I think I swayed them. And I think I swayed them to the European ideal by almost shocking them to start off with. And I said that the European Union is the biggest step forward in human history. And everyone thought, wow, that's a bit, I thought people didn't like the EU. And I said, no, it's fantastic. 28 countries sitting around a table, working for the mutual interest, helping each other. And I gave examples, and it was quite a while ago, but I still gave the examples about trade, about climate change, about dealing with international crime gangs. You know, you could give examples where one country by themselves couldn't tackle the problems that they and their communities faced. And that was a way to switch them over. And so I've always liked taking on Brexiteers and anti-Europeans, and always trying to go for those groups that are open-minded. I think we made a mistake in the last election on this, really, partly because we showed we didn't reach out to Leave voters and Leave communities, some of whom were swinging, could have been swung. And I think that's what you have to remember in politics on any argument. You'll never get the extremes, but those are people in the middle. And can you talk to them in a way which just moves them over your way? And that means reaching out. Sometimes it means really going that extra mile, which can be uncomfortable, to try to get them to your side. And we didn't do that over Brexit. And I really regret that. But I think as leader, I'm always conscious of those soft Labour voters, those soft Tory voters. I don't know if you have something called a soft nat, maybe you do. But reaching out to them to swing them behind our banner so we get past our awful first past the post system and win more seats at council elections, at general elections. Although, of course, in Scotland, you have STVPR.
Okay, thank you, Ed. And then,
sorry, can I just ask, if you're not speaking, including you, Katie, mute your mic when you're not speaking. It just might improve the sound for everyone.
Okay, thanks, John. Thanks for that. And the mute, the mic button is at the bottom of the screen. Okay, so Layla, over to you with the same question. Can you give me an example of when you have persuaded an audience to accept a policy or message that they were initially hostile to?
Thank you. Well, there's actually lots of different examples of this, because surely isn't this what politicians are meant to do? I mean, if you only ever campaign on something that everyone agrees with, it probably is already happening. And there's examples from within my own constituency. The Tories decided to put forward a crazy scheme. It's called the Oxford to Cambridge Expressway, which is a 6-lane highway between Oxford to Cambridge, £5 billion, and that's before it's even started. And we don't want it. And some people would say, well, why are you turning down infrastructure for your own area? But actually, it's the wrong type of infrastructure. If we are serious about climate change, we need to be opposing things like the expressway, because what we want to achieve is modal shift. And when I first started opposing it, I have to say, there was not a head of steam behind my campaign at all. It was me on my own talking about how it was a bad idea. And slowly, over the last year, we got groups together, we organized at a community level, and it really has to be bottom up. You can lead from the front in terms of what you say as a politician, but actually, unless you can galvanize the grassroots and galvanize your community, then it's rare that you can actually get something done. And I was delighted then at the last election, it was such an election issue locally that the Tories, who were trying to take the seat off me again, remember I'd only won it marginally in 2017 with 816 votes, and they saw that they needed to get rid of the expressway to try and win the seat back. So they came and announced that it was basically kiboshed. It didn't work. I won with the best result in this seat's history. But it's not just at a constituency level. I mean, I led from the front in the people's vote. In fact, I helped to launch it. I just described how I got stuff done on the coronavirus compensation scheme. You can't rest on your laurels and wait till you're in government to get things done. You have to get things done now. And that's what Lib Dem councillors do up and down the country. It's what we do, is we galvanise campaigns and we deliver for our residents and for our communities. And we don't wait until we have some moment in the future where we've gained power. You do it by being collaborative. You do it by reaching out across the whole of the community. You do it by building coalitions of voters, sometimes of people who you wouldn't normally expect. And the wonderful thing about campaigning on things like climate change is it really does bring over conservative voters as much as it does about young voters. So I'm proud to have stopped the expressway. I'm proud to have led the People's Vote campaign. And I'm proud of the work I've done in recent weeks to deliver the coronavirus compensation scheme. If you want someone who can deliver now, then I'm your woman.
Thank you, Layla. I'm going to have to apologise. There's somebody at the door, so there may be a noise of a buzzer, and I'm just ignoring it, and I will mute myself again after the question. It's the dangers of doing things via online. Okay, so Layla, next question is to you first, and to say, what have you personally done to improve diversity within and out with the Liberal Democrats?
Thank you. So I believe that we have to do something about our own diversity issues in our party. And the reason for that is actually from my own personal experience. I joined the party in 2007. I then was put on the leadership program. And in fact, Katie, you and I were on the very first the Future Women MPs weekend. And I remember meeting you for the first time there. And this party has had a great tradition of trying to push women forwards. But I think we haven't done enough for other groups. And the general election review makes that crystal clear, that particularly for BAME communities, we have failed. And it shouldn't have taken the Black Lives Matter movement to make us look in the mirror and say to ourselves, we're not doing this well enough, and we have to. So in my own local party, I'm proud to say that we have a 50-50 council group, but actually I've also challenged them to increase the diversity in our own local party, not just of BAME communities. And to do that, what you actually have to do is to go and find them. You have to go and ask them to join and encourage them to join. Very recently, I was at a food bank delivering food with my local Hindu community. And while I was there, I saw some cracking, amazing women. And I said to them, come on board, join. And they have. So it's about individual conversations, but it's also once they get there, recognizing that actually culturally, are we that welcoming? I remember the very first meeting I went to, an executive meeting, where I didn't really totally feel like I'd fitted in. And it took me a time to on board with the Lib Dems, because I'm not sure that we do tackle unconscious bias, that we are as welcoming as we perhaps think we are. And one of the areas that I think we do need to really hold a mirror up is our socioeconomic background diversity. I mean, we are generally middle class, very well educated. We should challenge ourselves, and we should do it at a local level by setting ourselves at local party level, our own targets. And all I would challenge people to do is say to themselves, do you represent the community that you want to campaign for? And if there is a large community in your constituency or in your area that currently isn't represented in any way in your campaign team, in your local party executive, then you need to reach out. Deeds, not words. For too long, our party has talked the talk, but we haven't walked the walk.
Thank you so much, Layla, and huge apologies that I had to disappear from the screen, but the delivery person was actually hammering on the door so loudly. It was
Katie, we want to know what you've been delivered. That's what we're interested in.
Okay, so Ed, the same question to you. What have you personally done to improve diversity within and out with the Liberal Democrats?
Well, I think I've had my biggest successes within my own party. Here in Kingston, when I first became the candidate, there wasn't that many women on the council. We had very few people from black and ethnic minority backgrounds. Now we have a majority of women councillors. In fact, we now have 38 councillors out of 48, and a majority are women. And all the leaders on the council, bar about 2, are women, including the leader of the council. So we've really changed the gender diversity here in Kingston. And I like to think we've also reached out to the many ethnic minority communities in Kingston. We have a large Tamil population from Sri Lanka, a large Gujarati population. We have a mosque where most of the Muslims come from Pakistan. There are some from Syria, Iraq, Iran. I helped the Sikh community build a Gurdwara with a lot of Sikhs from East Africa and also asylum seekers from Afghanistan. We have the largest Korean population anywhere in Europe. So I represent quite a diverse constituency, and I've worked over the years to make sure that not only do I know those communities and they feel that I'm part of them, but they join the Liberal Democrats. We have quite a high proportion of our membership come from the BAME communities, and 8 out of our 38 councillors have BAME backgrounds. So I think we've really made strides in Kingston, but I know the National Party's got to do a lot better, and I'll come to that in a second. But the question was also outside of the party. When I was the employment minister briefly for 2 years, I set up a commission called Women on Boards that was led by a bloke, because all the women I talked to said it's got to be a bloke leading it. And I commissioned Lord Mervyn Davies, who set up that. And it's already beaten the targets that we set ourselves to make sure that there were far more women on the boards of the FTSE 250 companies. We need to do the same for Black and ethnic minority populations. I also worked on shared parental leave, developed the policy, and Joe put it into law. And so that combination, working with Joe, we really dealt with something which is a big discrimination in the labour market by ensuring we've got shared parental leave. Still work to do on that, but I'm very proud that Joe and I made that happen. But what about the future? First of all, we've got to make sure that Joe's legacy of having more women than men in the Parliamentary Party of Westminster has continued. And we've got to do that in the Scottish Parliament too. You know, I know the Scottish Party is working very hard on it. It was brilliant that Beatrice Wishart got elected in the by-election in Shetland. We've got to build more on that. And beyond gender equality, we've got to do, as Layla rightly said, a lot better on BAME. I'm very proud that Roderick Lynch, the chair of the Liberal Democrat campaign for racial equality, is backing me. He and I have got a load of ideas. And for me, this is so significant that we've got to improve on our BAME representation across the piece, that if I hadn't solved this after a few years, I think it's something that means I should go, frankly. This has got to be top priority. We've messed around, we've got to solve it. And I just give you this warning. I'll be leading from the front. I'll be wanting to know what the Scottish Party is doing, the Welsh Party is doing, the parties across the country, because we have to, my friends, we have to sort this out. We've got to do more for LGBT+. We've got to do more for disability. But I think when you look at our party, we do not look like modern UK. And shame on us. The Conservatives and Labour look more diverse than we've got to tackle this, my friends. And there's another reason we've got to tackle it. It's not just our values that's at stake. It's winning. We don't deserve to win if we don't sort out this problem. It will be one of my top priorities throughout the UK, and I'm sure the Scottish Liberal Democrats will want to join me in it.
Okay, that was our first one where we heard the sound, but John, I think it'll need to be louder. That was a little...
Yeah, okay. I didn't hear it, John, sorry.
Okay. That was just the last couple of seconds. Okay, sure. So Ed, the next question is to you first. So there's been a whole range of roles that leaders play in electoral success, different aspects of it. What role should you, as leader, play in increasing our electoral success?
I think first it goes on to communicating a vision, making sure that when you get on the TV and radio, you do a really good job, and people look at you and go, yeah, I understood what this person was saying. I remember it. And then I'm beginning to understand what the Liberal Democrats are about. You know, I've worked with a whole range of leaders over my 30 years in the party and 20 years in Parliament, and different leaders have had different strengths. But if the leader isn't saying what the vision is, and I've been telling you what it is, if you've forgotten, a greener, fairer, more caring society, if we aren't repeating that so it cuts through, we aren't doing our job. So that's what I think party members and our voters and potential voters need to see. But it can't end there. You know, it's actually got to be about judgment, making sure that you get the right judgment. And, you know, there were fantastic leaders who showed great judgment, particularly think of Paddy and, of course, Charles. Amazing judgment from Charles Kennedy. His ability to reach people and get the tone right. He was just a master at it. And, you know, I would look at them as role models about how you assess the nuances of a political situation, cut through to find the argument that people said, yeah, now I get that. I agree with Charles, I agree with Paddy, hopefully I agree with Ed. And I see why Liberal Democrats have something special to say. So you have to lead from the front in that way, I think. That's probably the top priority.
Okay, thank you, Ed. And now, Layla, the same question to you. what role should you as leader play in increasing our electoral success?
Thank you, Katie. Well, first of all, the general election review itself has something to say on this, and we need to be very mindful of the recommendations that it makes. I mean, first of all, it talks about we have to make sure that that relationship between the leader, the CEO, and the president is well defined. It talks about a broken three-legged stool. And it's a team effort is the point it's making. You as leader can't fix it all. You can't do it all. And one of the key jobs of the leader is to make sure that you've got the right people in place, not just around you, but in key roles across the party, doing the right things so that you can together achieve electoral success. And to pin it all on one person, I think is wrong. Our party is bigger than any one person. There is no man or woman bigger than the team. The general election review also makes clear that the shifting political landscape that we're in right now means we shouldn't be taking any knee-jerk reactions in terms of what is the precise policies that we are going to major in our manifesto in 2024. And I would agree, because guys, we can't continue as we are now. You know, we have seen the dizzy heights of 20-something% before the last election. We ended on 12. We're now at 6. To suggest that we've got it and we understand where our electorate is, I don't think is right. So at that general election, my first instinct was to go and listen to voters, actually, to go on the doors and ask them in long conversations what they thought about us as a party and what they wanted from us. And what they said was they wanted to trust us again, and that they wanted to see how what we had to offer affected them in their families right now. And what they also said was that we needed to talk about the issues that really mattered to them. And that's why I picked education, the environment, and the economy, because those were the themes that the voters told me they wanted us to talk about. But there's another thing here, because if the party, you guys, create the prose, then the job of the leader is to turn it into poetry. The job of the leader is to have that emotional connection to the electorate and make them see how those wonderful, well thought out, well thought through Lib Dem policies created at conferences like this really, really matter to them. That's what Charles did so well, was that emotional connection, the ability to, through a television screen or on the door, meet anybody and find that way of connecting. That's what I've done the whole of my life. That's what I did as a teacher. It's what I did when I was a team leader in a social enterprise. It's what I've done here in Oxford, Western Abingdon, delivering in 2 elections in a row, a surprise win and then a massive gain. It's what I do. And so I know I can't do this alone. I need us to do this together. But I hope you can see that that bit, that intangible bit, that connection with the electorate, that is what I will focus on, so that by the time we get to 2024, we know that we don't just have the right policies that speak to people's heads, we also know how to speak to their hearts.
Okay, thank you, Layla. So the next question to you, Layla, first. How would you persuade donors to give to the Liberal Democrats, given our position in the opinion polls and the Scottish elections less than a year away?
Well, raising the money actually is one of the things that we, as whoever's leader of the Lib Dems, needs to take hold and lead from the front. And it's the same in our seats. When I first arrived in Oxford, Western Abingdon, I remember putting as a campaign pledge of mine that I was going to raise 100,000. Now, that had never been achieved in the seat before. And that's what I did over the next 5 years. And you do it by building connections, by making sure that the donors you currently have, you develop a good relationship with. And I have to say, there are a lot of donors in our party right now who are a bit concerned about the situation that we are now. They didn't invest millions for us to be at 6%. They want better return on investment than that. And so we are going to have to make sure that they and others are on board. But the other thing I'll say is I've brought in a lot of those donors myself, through the work that I've done with the People's Vote, through being front and center all throughout the Brexit process. some of the biggest donors of the party I introduced to the party. And so I do have a track record already of bringing donors in, but that's not going to be enough. The shifting landscapes mean that right now we are going to have to really increase the number of donors and the different types of donors that we can attract to the party. And that is what I will now focus on doing. I have a background that is very different to the classic politician, a life that's led primarily outside of Westminster, not within the Westminster bubble. They understand that actually at this moment in time in politics, where the landscape is changing so much, where people are so uncertain, actually, if you are going to cut through and you are going to do things differently, I think it's helpful to have that background and to be able to show them that we aren't going to rest on our laurels. Steady as she goes isn't good enough. We are going to have to push our party forwards in a way that's sustainable and in a way that's going to really think to the medium and long term. So I have a track record of doing this, but we absolutely have to know that unless we bring in new donors to our party, then we are going to face real big financial issues.
Okay, thank you, Layla. So Ed, now the same question to you. How would you persuade donors to give to the Liberal Democrats, given our position in the opinion polls and the Scottish elections less than a year away?
Well, I'd want to start with Scotland first. I then want to talk to business, and I'd also want to talk about the green agenda. But Scotland first. You know, the future of the Liberal Democrats starts with the future of Scottish Liberal Democrats. You've got the most important elections, I think, in anywhere in the country next May with the Scottish Parliamentary elections. And then you've got a massive set of local elections in May 2022. So we need to make sure that you've got the money. And so I would want to really step up my game working with Willie, Rennie and the whole Scottish team to make sure that people know why they need to back Scottish Liberal Democrats over the next few months. We need the money in soon. And it seems to me there's some very good reasons why they should back Scottish Liberal Democrats. Getting rid of the Tories is so important to stop independence. And we need to show that we are the alternative to the SNP. The Labour Party have basically been destroyed in Scotland. And previously, the Tories were mopping up the anti-SNP vote. But they've now basically said, in the way that Boris Johnson is so unpopular and is effectively fueling independence, that they're no longer in the game. So I think we need to reach out to disillusioned Tories, disillusioned Tory donors in Scotland beyond anywhere else. I think that would really help us get the money we need to fight for Holyrood in 2021 and fight those STV PR elections in 2022. And we can partly do with that through what I think we need to do actually nationally, and that is talking to business. A lot of the people who donated to us at the last election were from business. They were so fed up with the Tories over Brexit, and they switched from backing the Tories to backing us. And of course, because it didn't go so well, we're in danger of losing their support. So there is a chance, though, we could hold on to them. We can't move to the left. That would really turn them away. We've got to show that we're still a pro-business party, that we believe in enterprise, that we believe in markets and free trade. And I think that message, just when Boris Johnson is failing them in such a disastrous way, it means I think we can hang on to them and get some more. I mean, look at what Jamie Stone's doing on the APPG for excluded people, the people who are self-employed and small businesses who've missed out on the COVID support schemes. You know, I've been working not just with Jamie, with others on the self-employed, 5 million of them. They used to mostly vote Tory, but the Tories have betrayed them. We can be the party of small business and self-employed and get some support from that as well. Finally, I'd say the green agenda could be very profitable for us. It's where I brought in a lot of donors to the National Party and my local party because they like what I did when I nearly quadrupled renewable power and made Britain the world leader in offshore wind. They actually recognise that we're a party who don't just talk about it, but we've delivered it. We have experience as well as the vision. And if we go out to those what I call them green capitalists, there's a huge number of them, and it's growing and growing and growing. I think we have the messages and credibility to win their support as well. So I'd start with Scotland because it's so important. We've got to get our act together very quickly. I then go to a business, but I'd also go to those green capitalists.
Okay, thank you, Ed. So the next question is to you first, Ed. So which opposition party leader do you or have you most admired and why?
Well, this may be unpopular, but it was Tony Blair, because he won elections. He beat the Tories, and that is what we have got to do. You know, there's no point talking to ourselves, being a think tank. You know, he did some bad things, right? Iraq war was a disaster. We know that. But he also did some good things, and he managed to do them because he won. You know, winning elections is the passport to liberalism. Winning elections is the passport to progressive politics. You can be a centre-left politician all your life, but if you're in opposition, ain't any good. So the thing about Tony Blair, he went from opposition and he won election after election after election. And, you know, I didn't agree with a lot of the stuff he did. You know, he was illiberal on quite a few things, you know, on immigration, on criminal justice, with ID cards. He wasn't very good on the environment. So, you know, I'm not trying to say I agree with him on everything, but he won elections. He beat the Tories. And that's what we've got to do. He managed to talk to people in terms they could understand. And, you know, that's why I admire that successful political person that he was. And, you know, I think the Labour Party, you know, they went mad with going to Corbyn. It looks like they're seeing sense with Starmer. But they've not even yet realised that they won power and did great things with power, and they're not even prepared to rehabilitate Tony Blair. And I would simply add as a PS, you know, some people think that we should forget the coalition, even though we achieved great things. I think when Labour forgets Tony Blair, they're making a mistake. When we forget the great things we achieved, we're making a mistake too. Because let's remember, the coalition isn't our problem. Our problems are much bigger than that. You know, we had in Tim Farron a leader who'd voted against all the coalition measures, the controversial ones. Didn't do us any good when he was leader. We had Vince Cable, who was a coalition cabinet minister for 5 years. When he was leader, we had our best results ever in the 2019 local and European elections. So I think it's just factually wrong that coalition is the millstone. It's how you use that and how you don't let our opponents use it against us. You've got to be more front foot. You've got to pivot away to talking about our message. That's what I would do. And it's a dangerous oversimplification to say it's all about the coalition, just as it's bad news for the Labour Party if they blame Tony Blair. He won more elections than any other Labour leader, and that's why I admire him.
Okay, thank you, Ed. Layla, same question to you. Which opposition party leader do you or have you most admired and why?
Well, thank you so much. It's a hard one, this, because obviously by definition, you know, you don't want to necessarily compliment someone else, but actually there is someone who I work with now who is a great opposition party leader, and it's Caroline Lucas. And I'm a great admirer of hers because of what she has done to build cross-party movements in the House. And we can't wait to take power in order to affect real change. We have to know how to do it right now. And we have to do it in a way that really speaks to people's sense of urgency when it comes to things like climate change. And I've been doing a lot of work with her in different ways, but we back each other up. So when the Fridays for Future strikes were happening across the country, I raised it with our party as something we should absolutely get behind. And I went to the one in Oxford here, and I don't know how many of you went to them, but they are magical when they happen. And it was 2,000 students with banners saying, "Not in our name." And they made me promise, well, I did it very willingly, that we would as a party lead from the front on this issue. And so I went back, and the very next day put in an application for it's called a backbench business debate. Caroline was my seconder. And the first debate on the floor of the House in 2.5 years on climate change was led by me. And then, together with her and Ed Miliband, we brought Greta Thunberg to Parliament, and we held Michael Gove to account, and we spoke to parliamentarians about how urgent this is. And so I credit Caroline for that, because she was the one who had that close connection to Greta, and now I do too. We need to make sure that we right now are changing things, that we don't wait, and that we make sure that people understand that from the position that we are in, we can affect real change. And by doing that, what we did cross-party was we supercharged that climate change debate. And we made people see that Parliament is really taking it seriously. If we are going to recapture the young vote, the very same young vote that deserted us over coalition, I'm sorry, I take a different view to Ed. And you expect that I would, but I saw it here in Oxford, Western Abingdon, young people saying, we can't ever trust you again. And to own coalition means owning tuition fees. And it means owning the bedroom tax. And it means owning cuts to carers allowance. I mean, we cannot spend our time explaining the coalition. And I've never suggested that we don't talk about it, because that's ridiculous. And I do get asked about it. But what we need to do is look forwards, is to look at our future. And rather than explain, get out and campaign. That's what I want us to do. Not looking backwards, but looking forwards, and to use this moment of coronavirus to make people see that we can achieve great things from the position that we are now as a party. And if we can achieve great things now, that gives them even more reason to vote for us come the next election.
Okay, thank you, Layla. Now, the next question to you, Layla, first. It's a two-parter, so just let me finish it first. So, where do you sit on the left-right spectrum? The media would perhaps place one of you relatively to the left and the other relatively to the right in Lib Dem terms. Is this fair?
Is that part A and B? Is that it?
Sorry, that's it. Yes.
Okay, right, fine. So in terms of left-right, I mean, my view is that people right now have absolutely no clue what a liberal is. And this is the problem that we're kind of having as a party, because for too long, we were sort of subsumed in the identity of the Tories during coalition. And we see it, we see it with the Labour Party activists who call us yellow Tories all over online, and they try and characterize us as one thing. And meanwhile, if we talk about radicalism, and I talked about radical policies, and people assumed that I was talking about leftish policies, but I wasn't. I was talking about radical liberalism, the same radical liberalism, by the way, that was so successful for us under people like Charles Kennedy. And it's so attractive to people because if we can explain to them what that liberalism is, which, by the way, for clarity, is about freedom. It's about freedom of the individual to lead the best life that they choose. And the job of the state, including business, is to make sure that they have the ability to do that. It means strong public services, and it needs a state that is willing to intervene where necessary, but actually gives them that power. That is a message that I think resonates in all 4 nations of our United Kingdom. Because when you talk to people in the Highlands, do they feel that even Holyrood represents them? We need to have a USP, and that USP for me is that bottom-up politics. It's that power to the people. It's about making sure that they can choose. And that's not left and that's not right. It's actually neither. So it's neither option. But we do need to accept that others out there aren't there with us yet. And that's why this moment of rebuild and renewal for our party is so important, because when people saw Paddy and Charles, they had made the case. They had rebuilt what liberalism meant. You looked at them and you just inherently understood it in the way that they campaigned and what they spoke about, in the way that they stood up for social justice and peace and human rights. And it's often that when a big international issue comes up that people understand what this liberalism means. So we need to make the case for liberalism again and stop defining ourselves by other people. Define ourselves by what we want to be. I mean, is there anything more liberal than that?
Thank you, Layla. So now, Ed, the same question to you. Where do you sit on the left-right spectrum? The media would probably place one of you relatively to the left and the other relatively to the right in Lib Dem terms. Is this fair?
Well, I can only speak for myself, and I've been a centre-left politician all my life. You know, before I joined the Liberal Democrats, I was campaigning against apartheid and getting my college to disinvest from apartheid South Africa. I was seen as a sort of Green candidate, although I'd never been a member of the Green Party. So I've always been on that centre-left progressive politics. I actually in Oxford, I haven't told Layla this, in 1987, I was the student leading the Tactical Voting 87 campaign, which was an anti-conservative campaign, trying to get Labour elected in Oxford East, and a certain Chris Huhne for the STV Liberal Alliance in Oxford West and Abingdon. And he got one of the best swings because of the tactical voting work, the anti-conservative work that I did. So, you know, I've got a lifetime of fighting the Tories. I like to think I've got a lifetime of beating the Tories as well. You know, I think I'm the only Liberal Democrat MP in our party's history to win a seat at a general election that wasn't targeted. I was number 106 on the target list in 97. We won by just 56 votes. So I like beating the Tories. That's where I'm coming from. And I like beating them in government, which I did time and time again. So, you know, when we look at the party strategy, it's the Tories we've got to beat, right? It's one of the reasons today in an interview in the Business Insider, you can go and check it out. I've said that under me, there will be no coalition, no agreement whatsoever with the Conservative Party. They are a right-wing Brexit party. We should have no truck with them at all. In fact, our mission should be to work with other progressive parties to get them out. You know, let's remember, the Tories, getting the Tories out of Westminster will be the best way to stop independence. You know, the SNP are growing on the back of what the Tories are doing and how they're behaving. And if we can get the Tories out, that would be the best to stop the Nats. And let's remember the Nats. You know, I don't know where they really fit on the centre-left spectrum, but they're not progressive. They're nationalists. They're centralisers. They're illiberal. And my progressive politics is everything that the Nats I'm against everything that the Nats are for. And so I want to work with Willie Rennie and the Scottish team to beat the Nats, to be the alternative to the Nats. The Tories can't be anymore. We can be. And if we're the alternative to the Nats in the parliamentary elections next May and the local elections in May 2022, I think we'll go to strength in Scotland. And I think on the back of that, we'll be even stronger in the anti-conservative forces in the rest of the United Kingdom. So I don't think I could be clearer. It's basically, I've given my life to fighting the Tories, and I'll continue to do that.
Okay, thank you, Ed. So that was actually, you may be relieved to know, our final question. And I want to say a huge thanks to both Ed and to Layla for undergoing what would be maybe a different kind of hustings, and I hope you've enjoyed it and felt you could still get your message out.
Thank you so much. Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you both. I will stop.
Yes, we're going to stop recording, but also thank you to everybody listening. It's very hard to tell how this has gone, so in your feedback to the conference, do let us know at the end how this worked for you. But huge thanks to Ed and to Layla and to John as timekeeper. Well done.
Bye, everyone.